Hi everyone, I'd like to introduce you to our 18th Artist Masterclass, and today we're going to be continuing our series that we have done before on vehicles. And this is our long-awaited masterclass showing how to blow vehicles up. Now we're actually going to come with a template item that we've built for our weekly race meetup for this week. Every week we're now doing a vehicle-focused event. Where you can come along with a vehicle that has been designed for the event. So this is just me to note, for me it's on Thursdays, for you it is possibly on Friday. It depends on what time zone you're in, but have a look in our event calendar, because if you're interested in building vehicles, this is a great opportunity to show it off. So this week we've actually got a template Jeep vehicle that we've supplied. I'll put the link in the comments of the YouTube feed at some point later today, but you can use this one to get started. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to paint the vehicle. We're going to make our own little design for it. Then we are going to proceed with adding destructible components to the vehicle, and we'll drive it around and have a bit of fun with it. Okay, so first things first, when you grab the pack from the link that you download, you get this template race vehicle with Jeep. We're just going to import this into a project. Now actually I already have, which is the one you can see just here. I've actually already decorated it a little bit, but we're going to go reset this one so I can actually go back to the start. So I'm just going to pull this one in. As this is just a UD package containing everything you need, including the vehicle already set up, good to go. So it looks like I just need to reset the materials. Sorry, resetting the materials we are. Okay. So when you first get the vehicle, it'll look a bit like this. Everything about it has already been set up. We've already set up a loose collider around it. Now the collider's shell is not terribly accurate, but the reason for that was that we were using a mesh collider before, but one of the problems I ran into when building it was that the vehicle is a little bit wide. So what happens was the vehicle's wheels were intersecting with the body, and when that happens, the wheels would get pushed down a little bit more than we were actually hoping to do. So just to give a super quick demo, we'll just fire this one up. As per usual, the very first time you do this in a day, it will take a little bit longer than in subsequent hits of the play button, but we should be able to just drive this one around straight away. Now I do have other vehicles inside this park. They may make appearances in future vehicle meetups, so I actually really want to play around with that tank. Unfortunately, it is a commercial model, so I can't just send the source files around. Nonetheless, here is our Jeep. And as you can see here, it drives a little bit like a tank. So when you are building this this week, you can alter some of the properties, perhaps a little bit of a wider turning circle, and other things would be a good idea. But to begin with, this gives us our very, very basic vehicle that you can download off the site and play with to your heart's content. So first things first is that we're going to customize this one, and this is really the main thing, because if you can't edit the physics, this is an easy thing that you can do. We've packaged alongside this Jeep, we've also packaged a template for Substance Painter. So I'm going to fire this one up, and you can just click it, double click it straight away. If you're using Photoshop, whatever, all the other source files are included as well, so if that's your preferred technique. Again, I'm just going to do a quick run through with painting this up in Substance Painter, so I'll spend about 10 minutes. And we'll try and decorate something neat, because I can show you how this one works. So the first thing you'll notice is that when you import it, there is a whole bunch of texture sets. The very first one you can ignore, that's the glass. We don't really want to texture that, so we'll just do it in Unity. We've got the frame, and then we've got this section here. Now, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my other one, because I've actually already layered it better, and I may actually update the package to include my layered Jeep on Fire one, just because it's going to work a little bit better. I've already sliced out some of the alphas and things for the wheels and such, so you don't have to do the same job yourself. I think the key things you'll notice, well, you'll see very quickly, is that we've got a lot of the components already set up, so good to go. So in here you can see, for instance, the metal on the rims is flat. It's not very metallic, and what I've done is I've actually just gone through and I've updated these bits and pieces to actually have that reflectivity and things attached to it. So we're going to clear this one out, and then we'll get to work. So where are we? So just pull that off, and we can pull what is the one here that I want to take off. See, So it's the sort of black part, and then the other set of layers attached to it is all the sort of detailed components. And these I've only loosely done. I've done the wheels, the chairs, and the overall frame, but I haven't actually touched too much else here. So what you can see in the normal map, we've got the wheels at the top, wheels there. We've got seats, sort of these bits over here and here. We've got the metal frame up here. Now we're going to be able to take this into Unity and have a bit of fun with it, but for now I'm just going to decorate this one the same way that you can. It'd be fantastic if you show up to one of these events with your own personalized vehicles, so you do have at least 24 hours, I think, to get something up and running, so if you're keen in participating this week, there is time. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to grab the base color and I'm going to start playing with that. So I think it's like down here, the steel. What is it? Oh, that would be you. Okay, so sorry, it was on the other layer set. I should have known that because I was right there. So we're at the base metal and we're going to color this one. We'll do some sort of white camo on this one, although we do have lots of opportunities available to us. This is the fantastic thing about Substance Painter, is just the sheer capacity for making cool stuff. We'll just add a flip to this one, so add a black mask and a fill black. There we go. So I'm going to set that one to and you will start playing around with that fill. Now I do like doing things this way, just with the procedurals, because you get kind of cool effects that can be easily tiled across the whole object. So I won't spend a whole lot of time texturing this one, because it's really not the goal of this class. You guys have seen me play around with this texturing tool before. It is a fantastic one though, so if you are considering it, getting a copy of Substance Painter is a great idea. Now, one thing to note is that the decals on this particular car have been reversed. If you want to re-UV it to do your own UV layout, feel free. You don't actually have to use this model, and if you modify it, that's all perfectly okay. But what I will do is I will just change these tiling and scaling just to get this to line up, because it is possible to do. It gets a bit easier the smaller it is. There we go. That may be a bit, okay, just might go with that size, and I'm still not sold on that design. I think we've got some various camo patterns in here that we can mess with and find it. Some grunge maps and various bits and pieces there. The hexagons, yeah, I might look kind of cool. Let's see what we got. We do have a camo of sorts, but it's not really gonna. I'm just going to take the everything but the color, so we're just modifying the color here. So our base metal is giving us the Alright. Furthermore, we might just paint a couple of things on the side. So we'll just do that with a new fill layer. Again, we're just going to use a paint mask for this time around. So just have a black mask again, paint, and then I can grab some various designs that we've got in here and just paint them along the sides. So, what do we got? Might look interesting. as I said, the UVs are reversed, so you will see the same thing crop up in a few locations when you do paste, because we are sharing quite a bit on the map for this particular object. If you're designing objects to be customized, generally speaking, giving more room on the map for left and right sides is often worthwhile, because people do want to build with that in mind. So I might just okay, now what I might do is I'll just add a quick gradient to this. So if we add to this side, we add a generator, I think. And we can do one from 3D distance. And we'll lower the Y. That's how we do it. Just have to just double check a few of these. It's not the Y linear, it's the Z. What I'd like is a nice 2D distance generator, really. Good job. Might do is I'll just kill that one out of the fill. And I'm going to select it. Oops, and I'm going to select it. I think there's a property for gradients that will look correct. I don't want a dot. Oops. I was trying to line this one to show this one's got triplanar projection. So it's going to look a bit weird. Quite set the way we want. Okay, and then I think I can set another field. So I'm going to reverse the direction. So that'll do 0. White. What I should do is to multiply. So I might do that as a multiply, and I'll switch off the other ones. And we'll almost be out of time for customization side, but I hope this gives you some ideas for making your own vehicles. I think that looks alright. Take all U bits off. I might just see the height that's giving us that, not roughness. Yeah. Well, there's a bit more shine to it. But maybe there's too much. Okay, all right. That will be the basics of our vehicle we'll bring in here. So I'm just going to export the textures, and then we're going to make it exploitable. So I'll just bring the folder. This one. So export the textures in here. New. This will be our blue, purple. Okay, we're just going to set all these things as their default. Standard metallic is fine. All these other bits and pieces are good to go. So we'll just export to there. Okay, now let's drop the textures in, and we can start playing around with the vehicle. Now, the key to the vehicle destructibility is the stuff that I talked about beforehand in this at the very end of the snapshot. Masterclass was showing some of the tricks and tips with springs, joints, and other bits and pieces. That is the basics of how you build destructible physics onto your cars. Now, the key thing is that you've actually got to have the components separated. This particular vehicle is not particularly great for that because the majority of it sits in this one mesh here. Now, there is a sort of a performance trade-off in rendering if you've got lots of little discrete bits, but in terms of vehicles, it's okay. If you've got 20 or 30 or whatever little bits that comes off the side, that's all good. You don't need to worry too much about the performance. Now, if you've got lots of this in terms of a region, then it matters a lot more. But in terms of dynamic content, having lots of bits and pieces is not necessarily the end of the world. Okay, so I'm just going to bring all these bits and pieces in, and when I do, this has got a bit darker, and the reason for that is because we are missing reflections. Now they need to come in through a reflection probe, and we'll just bake one into the scene so we can actually have a look at our results. Let's do that, and I'll bring in the other bits and pieces, which is this one, that one, oops, that one, and that. Finally, we've got the last material on this object, which is this one, which is our glass. Now, to get glass looking good, you pretty much just need to go with the rendering mode set to transparent. Fade is the other type of transparency. Transparent actually means like real transparency, like the kind that you get off glass. So here we'll just set the smoothness up to really high. We won't set it to 1, but we will set it to 0.996 there. We'll set the metallic quite high, and we're going to set the alpha transparency down to almost nil. And there we go. That'll give us a nice glass, and you'll see the effects of that one, particularly if there's some light nearby. So we'll set one to there. So as you can see, that's sort of how the glass will react. Now, what we're not seeing here is reflections. Now, to do that, reflection probe just in the scene will give you nice quality effects. You should be doing this in all your scenes pretty much. I'll just drag and drop one into the middle of the scene here, roughly. We'll set that the size of this one to quite big, so set it to 1000. Hopefully that's big enough. I think it is. May not cover the complete scene. In fact, we may need to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. Right, and just bake that. Okay, now we should actually get reflections of the scene. And there we go. Our car is looking a bit closer to how we saw it in Substance Painter. And that's because it's now got the reflections attached to it. And you'll see those reflections in the windshield now too. Okay. So we've got our car. It's drivable because it's already been set up. You can watch the previous masterclass on vehicles in order to see how we set this one up. As you can see here, we've got a lot of wheel forces in here with certain momentums. I actually feel like this one's too slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a couple of alterations to this one. What we're going to do is we're going to set forward torque. I'm going to set that to 3,500 and watch it flow up in our face as we drive it around. So this is just the front wheels we're giving the torque power to. And I think the steering angle's wrong too. It's got a 15-degree steering radius. I'm going to set this to 25. So 25 degrees. You probably want to make sure both of them are the same as far as your two front wheels go, because if you've got one that the ranges are slightly different, you will find that it goes weird. I think is the most accurate description of it. I'm just going to give this a quick play around just to make sure that the changes I've made are actually in fact beneficial to the vehicle, and I haven't actually just broken it all. That is one thing with vehicles, you just want to do a lot of testing on them, just to make sure your settings are in fact good. So, vehicle. A little bounce of the camera, which I'm going to pull off, and that's the noise. Okay. Other thing, do make sure your backwards torque is quite good. That's one thing I noticed, that if you want to be able to turn around, having the ability to actually drive backwards quickly is important, and brake torque matters too. Because this vehicle right now drives a bit like a tank. I think our momentum actually isn't even high enough to bring us up this ramp. Can't quite see, but I think that's going to give us problems. So we'll just start playing around with a couple of these forces. I'm going to increase that. I think we've actually got back wheel torque. No, we don't. Okay, so I'm going to make this a four-wheel drive vehicle now. Oh, we had one wheel, one we didn't. That is something you probably want to fix. It's a bit more force all around. Finally, I'm going to give them. They're going to have brake on the back wheels, and they're going to have 5,000 newtons worth of force. Okay. And there's an idle brake on that one too. Okay, so that one should be there. So it's to 5,000 as well. And that will give us a really good strong brake. Okay, I'm just going to save this and test it around. As I said, you do kind of want to just test these things to make sure they actually work the way you want them to. The next steps will be actually just adding the spring physics in order to have bits and pieces come off. You probably do also just be aware when you do start adding physical bits that could fall off, they will have some impact on the momentum of the vehicle. So if you, for instance, have a springs, they will swing behind and add momentum that will lead to things like fishtailing. So you just got to be a little bit careful when you set start. Okay, so immediately I feel there's quite a bit more power on this one. Can I slow down? Slowly. Okay, we need more brake force on this one. But this is already quite a bit more drivable. So as you can see, I'm actually trying to do a sharp turn here, but we've got a lot of angular momentum sort of pushing us along. We're just going to be careful of that when we build things, because not all the racetracks have nice smooth turns like this. As you can see here, we're going to go up the side of a mountain and come back down. Because of our low center of gravity, though, the vehicle, generally speaking, will right itself eventually. That's one of the tricks that we discussed in the previous one, was actually we're offsetting the center of gravity on this vehicle, and by doing so, it gives us a bit more of a stable footing, the kind of one we experience in most video games. It's not accurate at all, not in the least, but accurate vehicle physics are not fun to actually drive. Lion from the previous Masterclass sitting over there. Okay, so this one's still not quite right in the driving, but you are more than welcome to start modifying this stuff with the vehicle package. It's all included and you can sort of get started, but we're going to move into the guts of this, and that is adding things that can come off. Now, one of the things we've got to watch out for is the physics layers. Now, the physics layers for various vehicles, I'm just going to pull them up out of the live project just so I know 100% that this is accurate. I'm just doing that on my other computer right now. We're going to run into issues where if we actually want to start embedding bits of physics in other bits of physics, they're going to start interpenetrating. So the quickest example I can give you of this one will be, let's say we add a sphere, and this sphere is going to hang into our Jeep. Put it there, and we'll just reset the position. Okay, now we're going to attach this with a spring joint to the base of the model. So what we're going to do is going to add a spring joint to it. Okay, and I believe the rigid body is on here. Yes, it is. So we're going to drag that as the connected body. Now, when we drive this, what you're going to notice is the spring is going to come explosively out the back the moment we hit play. I'm hopefully about to see that. I don't know where it has gone. So let's see what happens when we activate this. That is also something to watch for. The very first mesh collider in the object is the one that actually will get picked up for the clickable. So you don't want to make sure that the order has the bulk of the body in the front, because that's the one that's actually going to count as far as what you can click on to actually get in the vehicle. All right, take two. And actually, that does seem like it's actually not intersecting with the main vehicle, so that may be something that we're okay with. What we are seeing though, and this is something you can't really see until you're driving, is that the rotating spring here is actually exerting some pull on the car. So as the spring bounces around, which is what it's doing, as whoa, it's the wheel in that case, it's flying around, it's actually pulling the vehicle with it. Now it doesn't have a lot of mass because it's quite small, and the mass is set quite low. The vehicle itself has a quite heavy mass. If you look in the base rigid body, we actually got it set to 1500, so the amount we can pull it around is quite little, but it is expressing some force, and the more we do here, the more influence that's going to have. It really does like flying along like that. So I think we're actually okay on the connected joint. It seems like it's actually not intersecting with the connected body. I'm not 100% sure why that's the case, but I'll take the good fortune for what it is, because that's going to simplify things for you. Now it's still hitting the wheels. As you can see, occasionally it sort of bounces and hits the wheels and goes flying off, and it leaves a bit of a shudder on the car when it does. But it seems to be tied to actually when it gets under the wheel rather than in the side of the wheel. Now, making this destructible is pretty straightforward. I'm going to raise the mass of this one a little bit. I might even set this just to 1500. I just want to test this before I start messing around, because I want to have a bit more oomph to it, a bit more gravitas, which it will get by being a heavier object. Be aware that heavier objects will have bigger intersections with the objects in the scene too. So you will get sudden explosive interactions on a slow moving object just because it's imparting a huge amount of force when it actually hits. Even at low speed, because force is mass times velocity. So I don't know where our friendly little spring joint has taken this thing. Don't even see the... Oh, there it is. So it's very slowly coming along, being dragged along. So we'll eventually make it over to the connected position, I think, but it will take a bit of time and energy to actually get there. Although it will be interesting to see how much force this builds up in the process. What we've done here is we've made the object a bit too heavy. So I might set that to 150. That was probably quite a bit too heavy. Now, to actually get this to break off, what we're going to do is we're going to add a collision. Now, with the spring, this is going to be a bit hard to sort of engineer, so I'm going to delete this sphere off. In fact, I'm going to start adding cubes. Because a cube is a very straightforward thing. We can just add one to the front and make it break off when we hit the high velocity. So it's nothing there. We'll reset the transform. We'll put it to the front of the vehicle there. The joint. In this case, I'm going to use a fixed joint. Now, a fixed joint basically won't move. It will maintain its position as the object moves around. What we are going to do is we're going to add a brake force to it. And this is going to be the minimum number of newtons of acceleration it's going to have to experience before it breaks off. Now, be aware that the car's own acceleration can count towards this. So if you have an object that moves quickly, it will need to have a fairly high brake force to compensate for the fact that the vehicle itself is going to impact on this. So we have our cube, and even gravity will count. So if you set the brake force too low, gravity will in fact break it off on its own. So if you set the brake force, for instance, 1, that's actually even less than the 9 meters a second roughly that you're going to get from standard gravity. Okay, so again, I've put that first in the scene, so we just have to be careful about that, but here we go. We're able to drive it around, all good. Now if we hit an object with this, we should in theory break off the cube. Well, wasn't quite the way I wanted that go, but it certainly demonstrates the point. Now what you can do is you can consider, for instance, say you've got a bonnet here, and we're going to stretch this one out, we're actually going to make it a bonnet. So I'll just resize this, this cube, we'll rotate it in a second. What we can do is we can actually consider adding 2 joints to it. Now you might ask why on earth we would do that, and the answer is if we want this to spring. So we can have it hinged to the joint there. We can also have it sort of front. When it experiences a collision, it will start bouncing off. And you probably will have seen this effect in various video games in the past. So I'm just going to scale. I think it's only 2 there. Okay. A second joint, which is going to be a hinge joint. I think I've got the hinge right. So we just need to edit this, and this is where we get a little bit complicated. So where are you hinged? What I may do is I may actually do a chain here. So I'm going to create an empty object. Oops. Just around there somewhere. 6 minus 1. So 0. Okay, so that should be roughly speaking centered. It's not quite in the right position. We're just going to set this up as a hinge. Okay, and I'm going to put you on there. And fine, I'm going to remove your secondary hinge. I'm going to keep the fixed joint exactly it is right here, so it can break off. But this hinge, where it is, the body's going to be the base body, and the axis, I think, which axis is it? It's red, so it'll be the x-axis. Auto configure, we'll say all that's fine, and we'll set no brake force. So when we play with this one, what we're going to get, hopefully, fingers crossed, is a I might have made a small mistake in the scale there that I need to edit. We'll do that in a second. We may see some weird rotation on the cube as it flaps around. But in theory, we've designed this now so that when we hit an object, we're able to boom. Okay, that didn't quite go the way we wanted it to. I'm just going to sit and watch this though, just to make sure it's actually doing what we want. I don't think it actually is. So first things first, I'm going to take that cube out. That's it, that's going to fix the mesh there. Okay, so what we need to do to get this hinge working right, I'm just going to go through the joints and just make sure there's not a better one that I can be picking from. So we've got spring, hinge, fixed, character, and configurable joint. So I think the hinge joint is in fact what we want. So what do we need to do? not seeing the position of this hinge, and that's the thing that's a little bit worrying, is just working out where that actually is. I think it's there, but I can't quite see it beneath the... Yes, there we go. Okay, so that's a hinge there. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's actually just under the cursor right there. Motor attached to it. What's our spring attached to your horn? Just curiosity, what is a spring joint? So we'll just edit this one. 10.2. So we'll just try that here. 10.2. Type position 0. Okay. With no motor, that would actually cause it to flap around, but we don't want that. So that's the value there. If you hit enable collision, that will enable objects between the object to collide with each other. We don't want that. So I'm hoping that guys, we can actually see. 0. What we want is we just want the brake force to hold the object in place, but as soon as the car sort of hits that 500 required to break the fixed joint, then it should flap around. That's what we're going for in this effect. And hopefully with a bit of luck we'll hit that. Fingers crossed, and boom. Couldn't quite happen the way I wanted it to. I'm going to check on with you why you are over here. No, you are there. So that joint is attached there. I see the issue. So the issue I've done here is actually a really dumb mistake. I've actually got to have two fixed joints, and I realised that just now. One to attach it to the parent object, because just being a parent it will not keep it fixed, and the second needs to attach it to the Jeep, and that should do the job. I should realise that one earlier. Okay, so now we've got our object. It is in fact sort of attached, but not really. But what we've got here is we've got our spring, our hinge. Now I think what's happened is here, if we look at the vehicle physics, we'll actually see that the hinge has been pushed outside of the base car. So if I even flip this box collider off, we'll see what's happening. That's what we want. I've got to be careful because this car has now developed a life of its own without that heavy mass in the middle to hold it together. But there we go. You can sort of see what we've done. Now, obviously, you don't want to flick the box collider off, but what we will want to do on the car Jeep is we'll actually just want to try and resize this so it's a bit more accurate. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add multiple colliders to it. And to do that, I'm just going to start. Whoops. Add it and make it a little bit fatter. Copy component, paste component on this one, and that. And I'm going to shove that towards the front. Now, doing this with a compound collider instead of the base collider means we can have more accurate physics mesh attached to the object, which is important, because this is going to leave more room for this to sort of flap up and down. We're going to get overall better vehicle anyway. So just play with these values a little bit until we've got this right. You can attach as many compound colliders to one object like that as you like. So here we go. Bit of luck. This guy should now be able to drive around. We should be able to bang and then have that thing do what we want. So, slow it to a stop. Have a look, so you can see that's still sort of all nice and snug. It's attached, and the reason that is we've got the fixed collider holding us in place. But not once we do this. Don't know if I hit applied enough force there, but we should be able to figure that one out pretty quickly. So we can go straight into this cliff. Okay. Now gravity is going to keep that bit in place, but not if we fall like that. So as you can see, we've now got the first bit there in place. Now this is not sort of completely destructible. This is only partially destructible, but nonetheless, as a vehicle creator, it's sort of a useful effect to be able to apply. And then the purely destructible bits are much more straightforward. To them, it's almost exactly the same process. We'll just add a cube, as we did before. And we can just sort of add bits and pieces. You might, for instance, attach the rear view mirrors as a separate object, and all we have to do is just add a fixed joint connected to the parent object, and then just make sure that that fixed joint has the rigid body for the car as the connected body. And then in this case, you just need to make sure there's a force. So in this case, the brake force is 200 for this cube to fall off. And that's really all there is to it. The process of building sort of complex demolition derby vehicles is just a matter of layering components and components and components, because when you are hit by a car side on, that is going to convey the same sort of forces that you have already seen here in the connected body maximum force. All it just is this change in velocity is what's going to do the damage. It's not necessarily actually the collision itself, but the sudden momentum change that imparts. So here we go. Boom, and that dropped off. So with that in mind, I think that we are almost coming up on the hour now, so I don't think there's a lot more to cover off on this tutorial. Hopefully this has been a useful exercise in the basics of doing it. I will actually just repackage this vehicle with these changes so that people who are interested in attending the race meetup in their own personalized cars can. I think I've adjusted the physics and tuned this one a little bit better. It's still not quite perfect. Some of the changes that you might consider making to this vehicle, attaching, for instance, spring joints to the wheels. You can actually attach joints between the wheels and the car, and I do actually recommend doing that with a basic spring joint just in order to be able to have the wheels sort of bounce up and down. Now, there is also a suspension property on the wheel itself that is also worth investigating. Some of the more complex vehicles I've done, I've actually used the joints on top of the on top of the base vehicle, but as we can see here, vehicles lead for quite a bit of fun. We're going to just slowly fall down this mountain. I don't think I've actually got a lot of choice in the matter. It's just going to happen. There we go. Also, when you design these vehicles, it's good to have a nice test track like this one, where you get sort of varied terrain and things in place. Okay, all right. I am going to call the class there, and next week I'm going to be discussing inverse kinematics, in particular relation to animation. I had a request this week. Unfortunately, I haven't had quite enough time to prepare for doing that, but that's particularly relating to animating objects and animating interactions with objects. So, for instance, if there is an object on a furniture item in the world, you want the avatar's hand to reach out to it and grab the object. There's two ways you can do that. One, you could fix it with animation, but that's going to require the avatar's size to be fairly well known. The better way to do it is using a technique called inverse kinematics, which will let you actually reach out and grab it. We're going to use a little bit of scripting to actually access some of the inverse kinematic objects options that we have in ScienceBase, and perhaps depending on how much time we have, we might sort of look at how to hook those up to things like the audio reactor component to be able to actually create musical instruments and things that will react to a live stream that's in the scene. So that will be the plan for next week. If that sounds good, tune in then. It's the same time as usual, and I look forward to seeing you all in the office hours that we'll have in about 10 minutes time. Thank you all.